Well, welcome once again to the Old Cow Report. Of course, I'm your host, Chuck Lee, and with me as usual on this beautiful, sunny, and cold and clear January day. What is the date today, Freddie boy? January 25th, 1999. Glad to see you're with us again, Fred.
Yes, sir.
Fred, the true Stafford, ladies and gentlemen, back from a long vacation down south.
I'm nice.
And looking chipper as ever. He just had a facelift, and I'm telling you, he looks 20 years younger, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can get a close-up of that there, Roy, but look at how young Fred looks now.
Yes.
After getting all that work done. 20 years younger to the day. All right, well, welcome once again to the Old Cow Report. And as usual, boy, oh boy, Freddie boy, we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Of course, tonight our phone number there for those who want to call in is 839-6261, and we really do want to talk it up tonight, Fred.
Yes.
It's a cold winter night out there, and we broke the record for the most snow in January. But you know, Fred, driving around town, it doesn't seem like it's any record. I guess it's just because 3 years ago we had the old record. So this year doesn't seem too much. It seems a little better, Fred, because it's not 30 and 35 below like them some nights we had a few years ago.
Right.
So it's better in that sense, but I haven't really noticed where it seems to be that much more snow. All right, Freddie boy. Well, the Pope was in Mexico yesterday, and he's on his way to St. Louis now. And he looks like he's slowing down a little bit, Fred, and I know you've been following his career the last 20 years, and how he was under the thumb of the communists there in Poland before he was made the Pope, and he survived that, and he survived a assassination attempt in 1981, and he's had surgeries, but he's starting to slow down a little bit now. So what's your take on it all after all these years, Fred, of watching his career?
I think he's done a wonderful job.
Kind of revitalized the Catholic Church a little, hasn't he?
Yes.
I think that's probably one of the reasons why he's came to Mexico so many times. It's the second largest Catholic population in the world. I wonder where the first is, Brazil, or
I don't know.
which would be the largest?
Maybe Brazil.
Yeah. But he looks like he's slowing around down a little bit, but he still gets around, and they're going to have a big wing ding down there in St. Louis here in a couple of days. What day is that? Tomorrow or something?
Yeah, it starts tomorrow.
Okay, Freddie boy. Well, we always like to talk about cigarettes and tobacco on this program. We have been pretty much since the start of it, way before that second-rate hillbilly governor from Arkansas came into Washington.
Is that bear still out there?
Well, I don't know, Fred, but right now we're going to talk about this tobacco. And I got another piece of mail. I'm telling you, this Marlboro company, they must spend millions of dollars on mail, Fred.
Yes.
And this time around, they sent some contest rules to enter now the Rock the Marlboro Ranch. And it's another one of their ad deals here. And it's about this ranch out there in Marlboro land. It's all a fantasy thing, but there is actually a ranch out there. But, you know, the Marlboro man himself died of cancer. The guy rode the horse on TV all those years of lung cancer. And so they really are playing up this Marlboro ranch. And they sent me a poster, like I'm going to put up this poster in my bedroom or something. And it's Ranch Party Continues in '99. And they're really playing this up, Fred. And of course, I'd like to see the contestants that go to this. I'd like to see them 20, 30 years from now when they're laying in a hospital bed with one lung or no lip or no esophagus, or they're talking out of a tube in their throat or whatever, Fred. But right now they're really playing it up. And once again, they're saying down at the bottom, cigarette smoke contains carbon monoxide. They're really on this carbon monoxide kick over there in Marlboro land, Fred. They don't want to say all the other things it causes, like lung cancer, and causes fetal damage to young babies in the mother's womb, and causes probably a dozen different kinds of cancer, including stomach cancer. They don't talk about those things, but there it is, Fred. The latest tobacco trash that I got from the boys in Marlboro land. And you know, Freddie boy, talking about tobacco and death, I came up with some interesting facts off the internet about some unusual happenings. And here's one here, Fred. This one's entitled Ring of Death. Back in December of 1992, Ken Charles Barger of Newton, North Carolina, woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of the telephone ringing by his bed. So he sleepily reached out for it, but he mistakenly grabbed his loaded Smith & Wesson .38 Special lying next to his bed, which discharged when he held it to his ear, shooting himself to death.
Yes.
Thought he was answering the phone, and he answered a .38 gun instead. All right, Freddie boy, we're going to take our first call there, but I see you were hot to trot here about this, something about the bears out there in the woods. So what's all that about?
Well, this is by Pat Buchanan from the Wanderer, which is a Catholic newspaper from St. Paul. He ran into a U.S. Ambassador to Brazil and predicted the country's currency, that real would have to be devalued. He bet me to a dinner it would not. On July 1st, 1999, I lost by 13 days to a 41 5/10 international monetary bailout of Brazil. As predicted, all the IMF accomplished was to put another fortune in tax dollars at risk and kick the can up the road.
Huh. That's amazing.
You know, this guy, Pat Buchanan, really good.
Yeah, I think he's probably in the wrong party, though, Fred. He's never going to get elected president as a Republican. It's sad to say. He probably maybe should join the Reform Party. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, I want to know what you guys think about the new law that went into effect as far as giving out your Social Security number to get a license for hunting or fishing. To me, it sounds like more government intrusion in our lives.
Well, pretty much your Social Security number has became more important than your name. It's on just about everything that identifies you. Everything the government has on you has that Social Security number attached to it. And I mean, your number's out there so much, what's really the difference now?
Well, it's like this. Back when I was going to school back in the 50s, my teachers taught us to be so proud of the fact that we as Americans did not have to run around with all kinds of IDs and showing of numbers and so on and so forth. Well, now it's become to the point where it's almost like living in Russia. What used to be Russia? You have to use a Social Security number for everything. And to me, it's just another way for government to get control over our lives.
You know, Freddie was around when they first started the Social Security system. Was there any talk of anybody worried about using that number back then?
No.
What was that, like 33, 34, somewhere in there?
34, I guess.
Did you get one right away?
No, it went into effect in 1936.
Did you get one right away then?
I guess I got a card, yes.
So you've had yours for 63 years now.
Yes.
Well, you retired early, Fred. You got your money back out of the Social Security system, I'll tell you that. No wonder I'm working overtime.
Get the money back out of the system.
Fred's one of the guys that won on that deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not the point. The point is that they are using this as a disguise to supposedly to collect child support, so on and so forth. It's not that. It's a way for the Clinton administration and many other of the power-hungry, power-mad people in Washington to take control of your life. And I blame it right at the footstep of President Clinton. As a president of the United States, anything that infringes on the American people's rights, he should have stopped. Just like president of a corporation, when some idiot comes up with a design that's going to cost the company big money, he puts a stop to it. Clinton, if he had his way, I'm sure would become the first American dictator we would ever have.
Well, you know, in the book of Revelation, the New Testament, there is a phrase in there about taking the mark of the beast and the number. And it says in there that you'll either take that number in the palm of your hand or in your forehead. Well, in your forehead is, with the palm of your hand, you have this here debit card from any bank. I've got one here, and that has a magnetic code on the back. It's in the palm of my hand right now. And also though, I have to have memorized in my forehead a number that goes with this card. So that system is already in place. But it'll come a time when you'll either have to have this, or you'll have a number branded on your forehead, or in the palm of your hand, or a chip embedded in your hand, or possibly under the skin in your forehead, where they'll just wave some kind of laser reader across your forehead or across the palm of your hand, and something like the ones they have in grocery stores now. And that's how you'll be able to buy or sell. And it says, nobody, rich or poor, will be able to buy or sell without that number.
Well, if people want to take back their country, what they're going to have to do is just say, to hell with it, and not get a license to fish or hunt, and just go and do it. And they can't put everybody in jail. And if the people would band together, it wouldn't be long before they would go and drop these ridiculous laws that they're passing.
Unfortunately, it's not only out in Washington, but you got 50 legislators, plus you got a legislature in Washington. Their sole purpose is to create new bills, because that's how they get reelected, and that's how they get a reputation. So you got 535 legislators in Washington. You've got 133 of them right here in Wisconsin. I think it's 99 in the state in the assembly, and 33 or 34 in the Senate. So you got well over 100 right in this state. Each and every one of them goes out during campaign time talking about how many bills they got passed and signed into law, and that's how they keep score. But the trouble is, so you got all those bills being passed in Wisconsin, all those bills in Minnesota, all the 48 other states, plus you got all those bills being passed in Washington. And it probably takes a stack of books 20 feet high with all the different laws in it now. Nobody knows all the laws of the land right now. And the judge will still say to you, ignorance of the law is no excuse, and throw you in prison or jail for not knowing a certain law. But I guarantee you that it would take a computer hard drive, probably a 100 gig hard drive, just to load in all the laws in this country. And so we are getting law crazy. And I've been saying for years, for every law that they pass in this country, they should take one off the books.
I would say maybe they should drop all the laws and we start over. And maybe we should have laws by referendum. I mean, with the computers, there's no reason nowadays that every municipality could not take advantage of that by, if the people want it, the people go and get it, instead of elect these idiots that go there and come up with stuff that a lot of people do not want. But yet when you confront them with it, well, the majority of my constituents wanted that law. How do we know that? We don't see all the constituents. They can come up with some idiotic law.
Well, unfortunately, that's like I say, that's how they keep score. And it's either social laws they're passing or monetary laws that are going to affect us either in the pocketbook or affect our freedoms. And every time they pass a law, it's going to affect one of those two things.
Another thing that kind of gets to me is another thing that I lay right at the feet of Bill Clinton is the Brady Bill. In the Constitution, it says that our right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Every time I have to go and wait around for a government background check or whatever, my freedoms are being infringed upon. Mm-hmm. And this is just this new law they passed on the Social Security for a fishing license or a hunting license. It's just another way of getting control of the people.
Is there going to be any exceptions, any loopholes in that law?
No. Which one?
The one on the fishing and hunting license.
No. Why do you think the state of Wisconsin dropped the disabled fishing license a couple of years back?
I don't know.
Once you got one, you had it for life.
Yeah. So would they recall all those too?
Evidently, because I know a guy who is disabled, and his disabled fishing license is no longer any good. He has to pay, I believe it's like, it's a small fee, but nevertheless, he has to go and get one, and he'll have to give a Social Security number to get that license. So, you see, I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe everybody is hunky-dory with this. But on my Social Security card that I've had since I was 16 years old, it states on the bottom of that card, for Social Security and tax purposes only, not for identification. Now, what do? Go and break a federal law to satisfy the states around this country?
Yeah, it's kind of like having to have a driver's license for an identification. A lot of people don't drive, but they use that for the identification card too. But I know Clinton and Gore are kicking around having a national identification card, and they're going to use it to say they're supposedly going to use it to control illegal immigration and drug trafficking and things like that. But actually, it's going to be a national ID card that everyone will have, and it's another way of controlling us and keeping us in check. And you know, like in some European countries where you have to stop at border crossings and you get checked and your car gets checked, we could eventually see that from one state to another, and plus having a national ID card on top of it.
That's exactly right. You know what the national ID card is going to be? It's going to be your driver's license, and the number is going to be your Social Security number. And Clinton wants it all done, all states to fall in line by year 2005, that everybody has a driver's license with their Social Security number instead of driver's license number. And if you don't, you must get a ID card. And if you don't have one, it's like you were saying about the mark of the beast. You can't make a purchase, you can't vote, you can't buy firearms, you can't own property, and you can't get medical attention. That was all in the Leader telegram a couple of months back. So, I mean, it's not that some conspiracist came up with, it's a government plan.
Yep, it's coming down the road, and it's unfortunately it's probably one of the things that aren't going to be stopped, because you've got legislators that are looking to pin another bill on their chest as being passed and signed into law by either a governor or president. So they line up to get them bills signed, and it's a badge of courage. I know the local politicians from this area, they're always bragging in the paper about how many bills they got passed. I would like to see somebody go down there to Madison and brag about how few they got passed.
I'd like to know one thing.
And weed out some of the ones they already got on the books.
Yes, and I'd like to know one thing, too. If your Social Security number has not become the national ID number, like you say, the mark of the beast, is why is this? A child's born in a hospital, and before he leaves that hospital, he has a Social Security number that the hospital issues. When I got my Social Security number, I go down to the office and get it. Now a newborn gets it right in the hospital. Now what gives the hospital the right to issue a number?
They're under some kind of probably authority from the federal or state government to do it.
Yes, but isn't that carrying things a little bit far? A baby has to get a Social Security number?
Yeah, but it's from birth to death now. We're to that situation, and
Exactly.
they've got 1.2 Chinese counted now, and they've got about 800 million of the Indians in India. It's getting down to where there's probably only a few million people in the world that aren't even being counted right now. So it's with the computer system and the world just shrinking because of electronics and everything else. It's basically getting down to the point now where they actually could put into a system of one world government, controlled by the United Nations, controlled by somebody that would be voted on by all the nations as the leader. That person will sit in that white chair that's on the dais there of the United Nations, will call himself the leader of the world.
That's right, and
that's right down the road. It's not too far away. And I've seen several people, including Bill Clinton, sit in a seat, and Clinton wants to be the United Nations head so bad he can taste it. That's why he's fighting this impeachment, because in the laws of being impeached and found guilty, I think there's a law that says you can't hold any other offices like that.
well, you can. If you're impeached, you can hold no office at all. And I wish that the mental midgets of the Congress would hurry up and do it, because they're dragging this country down each day they drag it on. I mean, give the man his constitutional rights, but let's get it done with.
Well, you've also got the gasoline can and the match holders that are ready to throw gas on it and light the match, and they're trying to put into this debate racism and blacks against whites and sexism and everything else. This is just about a president who's trying to squirm out of something he did and broke the law, several federal felonies. There's hundreds of people sitting in prison for the same thing he did, and you got the Maxine Waters and the other people of this country trying to make it into some kind of race deal and cause a race war in this country over getting rid of a crooked president.
Exactly right. It's all the agenda of the power-hungry people of this country, power-hungry politicians, the Trilateral Commission, the whole bit. It's a new world order, one world government. It's coming. And if the American people value their freedom, and the freedom for their children and their grandchildren and their future generations, they best get busy and do something about it.
Yes.
Well, you know, a few years ago, the country was whipped up into a frenzy about the militias, and militia fever was all over the country. 10,000 people in Michigan marching in the militia up in the hills of Michigan and back in the woods,
Yes.
and it was just militia fever. Well, all of a sudden, that whole thing came crashing down over the Oklahoma bombing, and the militia movement pretty much collapsed around the country and imploded upon itself to probably now there's only a couple thousand people involved in it, and out of that couple thousand, probably 500 of them are federal agents that have infiltrated the various militia groups, including the leadership, just like they did with the Ku Klux Klan and other groups, the Black Panthers, all those groups that have ever risen up in this country, at least in the last 75 years, have been heavily infiltrated by state and local and federal government agents to monitor their activities. But that came crashing down, and I don't think right now in this country there would be enough people to rise up to stop anything that's coming. I think we've already lost the battle, and as far as the freedoms, what's been set in motion for the last 20 years is going to happen. We are going to move into a one world government. It's going to be somebody in the United Nations is going to be voted leader of the world, and they're going to pick off countries one by one with a world army that will go into, say, Bosnia and just wipe out everybody that stands in their way, or lay down your guns. And that's the way it's going to be, to the point where they will knock off Russia, United States, and possibly China. But I'm formulating a theory on China. The year 2000 is the year of the dragon. And in the Chinese zodiac calendar, this year that we're just going into now in February is the year of the rabbit. And after that is the year of the dragon, Fred. And right after the year of the dragon is the year of the snake. Right after the year of the snake is the year of the horse. And right after the year of the horse is the year of the lamb. Now, if anyone knows anything about the Bible, you can figure out what I was just talking about. The dragon, the snake, the horse, and the lamb. All right, Freddie boy. In the meantime, though, we got one more thing here. In 1997, Fred, a man was knocked down by a car in New York, but was fortunately uninjured. A bystander told him it would be a good idea to pretend he was hurt and claim the insurance money, so he laid down in front of the car again. No sooner had he done that than the car rolled forward and crushed him to death. So I guess it's going to be his relatives that collect the insurance on that deal.
In 1938, I was driving over on 69th Street, and I turned right on 68th Street, and had a Jew attempt to walk in front of my car, and I stopped.
What's the
And
difference?
he fell down
What's the difference what his nationality was?
Well, I was just telling you, that's what it was. And another guy that was there saw the accident and said, "You can't do that. You were all right. You run into his car."
Huh.
And he got up and walked away then.
Well, just remember this, Fred. 2000 is the year of the dragon. 2001, year of the snake.
Yes.
2002 is the year of the horse.
And then
2003 is the year of the
lamb.
sheep, the lamb. 2004 is the year of the monkey.
Yeah.
And that's for all the Darwinian ninnies out there,
Yes.
because that's what'll be left when we have the year of the monkey.
Yes.
A bunch of the Darwinians, the missing links. All right there, Roy. Speaking of Roy Rogers Hoff, our pyrotechnical engineer, fireworks man of the hour, great-great-grandson of Hopalong Cassidy, says that we got another call out there. So go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, hi, I got a question for you.
All right.
Somebody decided a long time ago that marijuana use should be illegal. However, it takes many, many people to manufacture alcohol, yet alcohol continues to be legal. Does that make any sense?
Well, marijuana, alcohol, and tobacco, of the three of them, as far as piling up the dead bodies, you would have to say that tobacco is number one, alcohol number two, and marijuana, as far as deaths caused by marijuana, would probably be down at the bottom, along with probably being struck by lightning. It doesn't happen very often, whereas with tobacco we have about 300 and some thousand deaths a year. With alcohol, if you're not, it causes about, I think, 40,000 deaths on the highway every year, plus untold misery of people involved in murders and fights in bars and divorces, and the prisons are full of people that did crimes while they were on alcohol. And the people that are in jail for the crime of marijuana usually is for the possession or sale of marijuana. It's not because of the physical harm that it did to anyone. So the laws, like I've said on this show, I don't know if Fred agrees with me, but the laws concerning marijuana, the police use it as a way of getting to higher up drugs like heroin and cocaine and busting people for that. A lot of times they'll kick in a door. Maybe they couldn't find the cocaine. They know the guy's dealing cocaine or some other drug, amphetamines or heroin or something. But usually there's some marijuana laying around. That's enough to bust the person on and to build that record against them so that they end up in prison. But you know, some people are getting sentenced to life for drug usage and the things that go along with drug usage. And some people are getting sent to life because of the way the system's set up. They end up getting in serious trouble where because of the informant system and other reasons they might have to kill somebody or be killed. And there is a trail of bodies between Colombia and the United States as far as cocaine, and to a much lesser extent the smuggling in and the sales of marijuana. So it's not by any means a 100% clean drug, but when you start stacking up the bodies, tobacco almost reaches to the moon compared to marijuana.
But alcohol being something that has to be produced, and marijuana being something that grows wild, who was it that has the right to make this decision and say that one should be illegal and the other not, when one has to be produced by many people? The other grows wild.
Well, as you probably recall, several state governments over the years have tried to legalize marijuana to a certain extent, but on the federal level, it is still illegal. I think they've decriminalized it pretty much in a lot of the states, but it's kind of like a pendulum that keeps swinging back and forth from a point to where you had people serving 20, 30 years back in the 50s and early 60s, and then it swung the other way where people got probation. Now it tends to be swinging a little bit more to the harsher side, filling up the jails and prisons again with the marijuana users and dealers. And so that pendulum keeps swinging back and forth, but it's the people that rule, and we were talking earlier about all these legislators passing laws. You have to lean on your legislators, those legislators, to change the laws, and then lean on the governors and the president to sign them into effect. And that's why on a national basis there are still anti-marijuana laws on the books, and that's why alcohol and tobacco are legal. They're big money makers, but alcohol and tobacco are legal killer drugs, whereas marijuana is illegal. It's not a killer, but it's a drug.
I would sure think that if you legalized it and taxed it, it'd also be easier to control, plus it would also be very profitable.
Well, you have organized crime involved in alcohol and to a lesser extent tobacco, but organized crime controlled the alcohol traffic when it was illegal. And then when it became legal, they were poised right in the right spot with enough money to take over some of the manufacturing and sales and distribution of alcohol, and to the point where some of the bigger mafia families now have branched out into owning Hollywood studios and owning big casinos in Las Vegas and controlling major crime families all over the country. And it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that just started back during Prohibition and sprung from there. But and to a lesser extent with marijuana, you have marijuana barons, you got marijuana millionaires in other countries that are making money off the illegal trafficking of that drug. And even if it was made legal, you could probably never grow the quality of marijuana in this country that is grown in some of the farther south, closer to the equator. But maybe they could, I don't know. But as far as making it legal, it would have to be highly regulated, and it's just a big headache to try and add another drug to become legal, unless they try to get rid of one of the other two that are already causing untold misery and problems in this country. I mean, nobody likes to see a loved one laying in a hospital bed dying of lung cancer, or somebody dying of liver disease from being an alcoholic, or their brain rotted away from alcohol. In either case, or nobody likes to go down to the morgue and identify one of their family members that got in a car wreck with somebody that hit them head on that was drunk, and the person that's drunk was probably so drunk that they survived the wreck, but the sober person didn't. That plays out every day in this country, and it's just a shame, but there's millions or billions upon billions of dollars made off of alcohol and tobacco right now. All right, Freddie boy, what do you got there?
This is also from The Wanderer, and Linda Bowles writes a column there, and it's from July 28th, page 5, and it says, no, let's go down here. I'll get to the meat. Well, listen to the various legal experts as to the impeachment scenario unfolded. Something happened that I did not believe possible. My esteem for criminal lawyers, defense lawyers, trial lawyers dropped even lower. Never saw a group of people who had more contempt for the law, justice, and for common sense.
Yeah, that's amazing, Fred. In common everyday English, what's that mean?
Well, they're defending a guilty president and trying to get him off.
All right, well, there you have it. Well, here's a little one here, Fred, that you might like. This woman here believed that her husband had betrayed her, and she was so distraught over it. Her name was Vera Cermak of Prague, Czechoslovakia, that she jumped from her third-story window, Fred. She was so upset.
Yeah.
And as she landed, as she came down to the ground, she landed on that exact same husband as he passed by below.
Yes.
She was recovering in the hospital, but he died instantly.
Yes.
Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, how you guys doing tonight?
All right.
All right, I just got a couple quick comments about that, the fellow who called in a little while ago about the Social Security number.
Yeah.
No, he says that's for the fishing and hunting license. Is that what he said?
Yes.
Okay, now, that would have nothing to do with the federal government. The fishing and license, the DNR of this state is run directly through the state. Now, the state would be the one who would want that Social Security number. I'm not a Clinton fan for nobody, but he cannot say that the federal government is making us put these Social Security numbers everywhere. You know, I just don't get it. We live in the greenest country in America, I think. Don't you think so, Fred?
Yeah, it is green.
You bet. And
Well, you know, Fred lived in Italy for a while.
Oh, I
And
did.
he almost went to Nam once.
well, Fred's a fighting man. He knows what's going on, don't you, Fred?
Well, he was out in New York City. That was like living in a foreign country.
Well, close enough. But anyways, now, you want to live in the best country in the world, you're going to have a little give and take, now, aren't you? You're going to have to pay some taxes to get what we want. If you want to be a libertarian, I guess, and not have any rules at all, and do what you want to, then you can go live on an island by yourself. You know, you can do that. But if you're going to be living with people in this country of ours, in the world, anywhere, there's going to have to be rules. And in order for some of those rules to be enforced, or some things to happen, you might have to pay in a little bit of money. It's not going to hurt me any, because if I have to pay in $10, or if I have to give my Social Security number, well, why should that make a difference?
Well, anymore, if you think about it, we could do a thumbprint with a scan system that, with the computers the way they are, one thumbprint could be used as an identification. We're using a number right now. You could use the retinas of your eye. Every human being has a different eye pattern on their eyeball. The thumbprint is individual for everyone in the world, and also everyone has an individual DNA. So there's many ways that it's going to get down to identify us. Right now we're using a number system. It's kind of crude, but I'm sure it's getting more sophisticated, and they're using that for the hunting and fishing license. But it's just it's the system we have in place for identifying us, and I guess it's because there's so many Smiths and Jones out there. They have to have a number to identify them as differently, but there are many other ways. In some countries, they're already using a thumbprint for people to vote, so that there's no voter fraud. Because in some places, somebody will vote at one voting booth, go to a couple blocks away, vote again, a couple blocks away, and they get paid for how many times they vote in a day. So they instituted the thumbprint, and I don't know how that's going to work in some of these countries where they've barely got computers yet, but in a highly sophisticated country like the United States, we could do that thumbprint scan, and that thumbprint could be used as an identification tool all over the country. So we're just to that point where we have to use some kind of identification. Right now it's a number. All right, Freddie boy, before we get into your next article there, here's one here that was kind of interesting. Vincent Orr served 4 years in jail for the murder of his girlfriend in New York on New Year's Day, 1985. He admitted repeatedly hitting her head on the concrete floor of their home in Radcliffe during a drunken row. In the summer of 1991, he went on holiday to Corfu with his new girlfriend. Taking a swim on the first morning, he smashed his head on some rocks and died a few minutes later. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know it.
All right, Freddie boy, earlier we were talking about how we have race baiters out there like Jesse Jackson, and they're always trying to stir up the races and get people thinking black and white and stuff, and Hispanic and white and Chinese and black and whatever. Somebody that tried to do that back in 1971 was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison, actually sentenced to the death penalty, and then the death penalty was knocked down in California, and it was reversed to life in prison. And him and his followers are still trying to get out of that situation. But back on this date in 1971, Charles Manson is convicted, along with followers Susan Atkins, Leslie Van Houten, and Patricia Krenwinkel, of the brutal 1969 murders of actress Sharon Tate and 6 others. And this whole thing was talking about race and stuff. This whole thing was Charles Manson and his followers were trying to start a race war. And they figured if they did some gruesome murders out there in the Los Angeles area and blamed it on blacks and blamed it on the Black Panthers and other radical groups, they would start a race war, and Charlie Manson would survive this race war and become the leader of the world. And they had some Beatles music involved in the whole situation, a song called Helter Skelter. Manson thought that was a code words for starting a race war and starting the apocalypse. And so it all ended in the murders of, like I said, about 9 people altogether. That's this Tate family group. There were 6 of them there, but then there was a couple more that were murdered a couple nights later. But also there was probably another dozen or so of his own followers that Manson ordered killed, and I think even one of Manson's lawyers was found face down in a stream. He'd been murdered, and Manson made a statement once that his people would be going out all over the whole country, killing their parents and other people. And so here, this is 28 years later. He's still in jail, and we're still having the repercussions of that. I think there is still a remnant of the Manson family running around loose in the country also. All right, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hello, is Fred there? This is Laverne.
Hello, Laverne.
Say, I want to ask Fred a question. I'm having an argument with a friend of mine here in the house. Do cows sleep?
What?
Do cows sleep?
I think so. Yes.
You think they do?
Yes.
Well, that's what Betty says. She's been married to one for 30 years. Said he snores like a cow.
Oh, thanks. I just got one more question for you. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah. Do you know where my remote is?
Do you know where her remote is?
No,
You know that woman?
I don't know. I don't know.
She lost her remote control. She wants to know if you know where it's at.
I don't know.
Oh, I thought you knew her.
I don't know.
All right there, Freddie boy. Well, that's enough of the Manson clan. Back in 1981, Chairman Mao's widow was sentenced to death. She was one of the Gang of Four back in the late 70s that tried to, well, they were part of what was called the Cultural Revolution. It caused thousands of deaths, and finally it ended up with her being arrested and found guilty of some serious crimes against the Communist Party in China, and she was sentenced to death. But then, back in January of '83, she was the death sentence was overturned. So that was Chairman Mao's widow.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't take him long to try and knock her off, Freddie boy.
Yes.
And did you know back in 1995, Fred, that the Russians almost launched some nuclear weapons against us?
Yes.
You did? How
Yes.
come you didn't tell anyone?
I was keeping it a secret.
All right. Okay there, Freddie boy, we better take another call here. You know, today was the birthday of, let's see, who? Remember Lou Groza, Fred? Lou the Toe Groza,
No,
football kicker,
no.
sports broadcaster, was born in 1924. Let's see who else was born on this day. Eugene Washington, a football player that was in Super Bowl IX from the Minnesota Vikings, was born on this date. And not anyone else that probably anyone would recognize here. Dean Jones starred in The Love Bug, some other movies. He was born today. All right, Freddie boy. Get another one ready there, and we'll take this call first. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hey there, Chuck.
Hello.
How's it going? I'd be a homo without the village people if I didn't have a slab of meat today. I got a quick question for you. I heard you talking about Chairman Mao
Yeah.
on the program here, and I know him to be how should I say this, a genocidist and a horrible oppressor of his own people. And I was wondering if you had any comments on the regard to American companies such as Shell Oil going over to African countries such as Burkina-Faso and Kenya, and how they wipe out entire villages of people just so they can pump their oil. Do you know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm saying?
So Shell Oil does that?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? They take a bunch of soldiers from that country. Shell Oil buys off the army, you know what I'm saying? Then they completely go into the entire village and wipe out, and they're entirely wiping out entire villages of people, just so the American oil companies such as Shell Oil can.
Well, I think Shell Oil is owned by the Dutch.
No. Shell Oil is an American company, Chuck. Come on now.
I think you better study that again. I think they're Dutch. All right, Freddie boy, while you're getting that next article ready, here's a quick one for you to chew on. Mrs. Dorothy Johnson's 2-year-old great-grandson offered her a jelly sweet before taking off his hat to show her his new, extremely short haircut. She found this so hilarious that she burst into uncontrollable laughter and choked to death on the sweet candy. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
All right, what do you got there, Freddie boy?
Going to the Wanderer, which is a Catholic paper, and there are a couple of articles I'm just going to read a line or two from. Abortionist and mill administrator both face manslaughter charge. Right to life, pro-life speech on trial in Portland court. Teacher fired after asking students to write to congressman.
Huh.
Unless you're reading a Catholic paper like this, you don't know what's going on in the world.
That's for sure. All right, scientists are on the verge of building artificial life, Fred. And there was some article in Leader Telegram today, but I don't know if it's talking about the same one as this. But this was where they took a small organism from the urinary tract of human beings, and it only had 470 genes to it, whereas a human being has 80,000 genes. This little bug, this little organism lives inside of the human being, only had 47. So they're stripping this thing down to see how many genes that they could get it down to and still keep this organism alive, and they stripped it down to 300 essential genes. And it's called the name of the organism is Mycoplasma genitalium, and it's related to Mycoplasma pneumonia, which has about 80 more genes, or 200 more genes than the first one. But anyway, they're going to take that gene, that little microplasm that they stripped down to 300 genes, and they're going to somehow make artificial life out of it, Fred.
Yes.
And once they do that, well, they're already doing it, but this is just one more step to kind of hearkening back to Frankenstein and taking that dead body and making it come back to life. And they're doing this now. They're going to actually be able to create artificial life with this gene here, and I don't know what they're exactly going to use it for, but it's just one more step down that slippery slope to messing with God's creation, Fred.
Yes.
And but it sounds like they're pretty close there on that one. After we take this call, then we're going to go into the vast left-wing conspiracy. We've had the talk from Hillary Clinton, blamed all of these women that Bill Clinton's been chasing all these years, over 100 of them came forward. She was trying to blame this on a vast right-wing conspiracy. It was all the conservative Republicans and other conservative groups. It was all their fault that Bill Clinton has been screwing around for the last 25 years. First down in Arkansas and then in Washington. It's all the fault of conservatives, Fred. That's what Hillary tried to say. And of course, some of the liberal press, or a lot of the liberal media, jumped right on that bandwagon and ran with it. So now there's an article coming out that talks about a vast left-wing conspiracy that is now going after conservative and Republicans in the country. And of course, you can lay on the doorstep of the Clintons taking over 1,000 FBI files of prominent Republicans.
Yes.
And gleaning information out of that and putting it into an enemies list, into their computer, and building dossiers for attacks on their enemies. And you also have James Carville out on the left there that actually violated federal law when he threatened to break the kneecaps of Ken Starr. Either threatening or actually doing harm to a federal official is a federal felony. And Butch Reno is not willing to prosecute him.
I know.
So he's getting away with actually threatening a federal official, a very high-up official that's attached to the Justice Department. That's like you going down to the courthouse and threatening Pellrine down there that if you don't back off, I'm going to break your kneecaps. And then Pellrine and his people not doing anything about it.
Yes.
Well, that's what Carville has done, threatening to tell Ken Starr to back off, and they're not being, nobody's bringing him to task for it. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Doug. Hi, Fred.
Hello.
How you guys doing?
All right.
Good. I'd just like to say your last caller was an idiot. He doesn't even know who owns Shell and is making idiotic comments. But
I think it is a Dutch company. There might be American stockholders in it, but I think it's the Dutch or the Netherlands that owns it.
I agree.
And maybe they do have a mercenary army that's chasing off indigenous people off their land to drill for oil, but that's going on all over the world by communist groups, by billionaires, by countries, by individuals. That's part of the just part of human nature, where people are grabbing for that golden ring.
I mean, we got to keep the U.S. ahead of everyone else. I totally agree.
Well, I don't condone going into villages and wiping everyone out so I can drill for oil.
Oh, okay. Well,
Why not just go in there and give them each $1 million? If there's $1 billion worth of oil in the ground, you can afford to throw a few million.
I agree. I'm actually calling tonight for a little bit of advice. You and Fred probably have been around the block and have a little bit more life experience than I do. So I was hoping this question is for either of you. I got a girlfriend. We've been seeing each other for about 4 months now, and I'm, to be frank, having a problem getting her to put out. Any advice?
Well, Fred has told many stories about some of those wild girlfriends he had back in New York.
Oh, I did
What's
not.
your advice to him, Fred? You told me about that one girl.
I would marry her and then have it.
You told me about that one girl who lived above you there that was always trying to pick you up.
What?
That one young girl back when you was a young man
No,
that lived above you there
I did not.
that was always trying to get you involved in some serious discussions.
No.
And so
wrong.
what's your advice to this young man here? He wants to...
I told him to marry her and then have sex.
Well, that's pretty good advice.
Yes,
So
that's Christian.
abstain until marriage, right?
Yes.
You know, that's one way also of cutting down on the venereal diseases and other diseases that are running rampant in this country, Fred.
Yes.
Hepatitis B and the HIV virus and gonorrhea and syphilis and herpes. Those are just running rampant like wild grass fires, Fred, out there.
I
And
know.
the reason for it is because of all the promiscuity out there.
Yes.
And it's going to always be that way. People are taking chances, rolling the dice, and you're going to, you could roll the dice and end up with a killer disease like HIV out there. And it's not just confined now to the homosexual community, it's spread out into the whole community. And thanks to what we found out, one of the nasty things that Clinton did down there in Arkansas by buying blood from prisoners in the prison system down there, and then bagging the stuff up and shipping it to Canada, and not telling the Canadians that the stuff was full of HIV virus and full of hepatitis. It's going to cost the lives of, roughly estimating now, between 7,000 and 10,000 Canadians are going to lose their lives because of contaminated blood that came out of the prison system out of Arkansas underneath Clinton's reign down there as governor.
Yes.
And so he's got the bodies, he's going to have the deaths of those people on his hands also. All right, we got time for a couple more calls here, Fred, and just before we take that call, I want to get into this vast left-wing conspiracy. It looks like Larry Flint now is out on the left there, and he's digging up dirt on conservatives and exposing them. And kind of doing what Hillary said that the conservatives are doing against him and against her and her husband. It looks like Larry Flint from Hustler magazine is going after certain members. This article here comes out of the New York Post, and it's a commentary by Sam Dealey, and it's called A Vast Left-Wing Conspiracy. And it's 3 pages long, but the gist of it is it ties Larry Flint and Strobe Talbot and Blumenthal and other people, and a guy named Terry Lenzer is a Clinton dirt digger, and James Carville and some others. It ties them into a left-wing conspiracy to dig up dirt and attack conservatives in this country. All right, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hello.
Hello.
I guess I hate to put your show down in the dregs here after that last call, but my question isn't really political either. Actually, I have a question about my girlfriend.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay. See, we've been dating for quite a while, a few years now, and we're getting pretty serious, but she gets really jealous all the time, because whenever we're out, like at the bars or around school, there's all these girls, looking at me and giving me their numbers and stuff. And it doesn't mean anything to me, but she gets really upset, and I don't really know what I should do. I mean, I can't help it.
Well, I'll tell you, Fred has been writing articles, and he's kind of had a advice for the lovelorn section in the newspaper back east for many, many years. Fred, what advice have you got for this young man?
I wouldn't be concerned about it.
I'll tell you, Betty accuses Fred of being a big ladies' man around town and always having girlfriends he goes and sees, and he's kind of been slowed down a little bit now because his car got sold out from underneath him, and he's working on getting a new one. But so in the meantime, he's down to using the bus or taxi cab, so he's not be able to run like he used to. But Fred was quite the ladies' man, and so he can answer your questions on that area. All right, Freddie boy, before we take this other call here, it says, you know, the Clinton's State of the Union speech here about a week ago. It says here that he wants to increase, the people have crunched the numbers now on his speech, and they said he wants to increase federal spending by 20%.
Yes.
He wants to increase it almost $300 billion. Now, guess where that money's going to come from, Fred? It's going to come
Social Security?
It's going to come from taxes. They're going to have to get it out of taxes. Yeah, the Republicans right now are pushing for tax cuts. Clinton wants to up the budget another $300 billion and spend $300 billion more of your hard-earned tax dollars. And so he wants to take it out of your pocket and give it to other people that aren't willing to go out and work for it themselves. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi, Chuck, Fred. How you guys doing today?
Hello there.
All right.
I just want to say that you guys got a great show, and I'm a first-time caller.
Well, thanks for watching.
You know, I heard you guys talking about venereal and STD diseases earlier, and I was wondering what you thought about the idea that there's some scientists these days that state that as humans evolve, eventually we'll evolve and just be resistant to diseases such as AIDS or hepatitis B or gonorrhea, all those types of stuff. That after, you know, we evolve into better human beings, we'll be better. What do you think about that?
I'll tell you this. I'll tell you, it's all down to 4 words. Don't hold your breath. All right, 3 burned to death in India, Fred. Some missionaries were attacked by a radical group in India, the anti-Christian group, and this guy was asleep with his 2 sons. He's a 58-year-old missionary that had worked with leprosy victims in India for 34 years. Him and his son, Philip 10 and Timothy 8, and his name is Graham Stewart Stans, a secretary of the Evangelical Missionary Society. This group of about 40 people surrounded their car and poured kerosene over it and lit it on fire and burned the 3 of those people to death. So you talk about martyrs in the end times, there's 3 of them right there that were burned for the faith over in India by some goofball radical group over there that has recently attacked 12 Christian churches, but they're also going after Hindu temples. The unrest began after radical Hindus accused Christian missionaries of converting people to their faith. So just for that reason, these people were martyred, these 3 people. And it's unfortunate that that would happen. And I think they're originally from Australia. So it's an agonizing death, Fred, to be burned to death.
Yes.
And there's only 23 million Christians in that whole country of about 800 million. I guess now they're saying that India is 1 billion, so it's actually growing faster than China is. And out of that 1 billion people, 23 million, so it's just a minuscule.
Yes.
About 2% of the population is, 2.3% is Christian. Hindus, on the other hand, are 82%, and Muslims 12%, and the rest include Buddhists, Sikhs, and Jains. But missionaries have been in India for 200 years, but now they're being martyred for their faith. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yes, I just have a question. I have an opportunity to move up in my place of employment. The only thing is that in order to do that, I would have to sleep with my boss. What is your opinion on that?
Male or female?
Female.
Female?
Yes.
Well, it's even gets. Life was so much easier back in the 50s, Fred.
Yes.
Nowadays, you don't have to worry about a male boss. Now it's a female boss trying to go to forcing a female underling to go to bed. There. Well, Fred has been writing this, the Fred the True Stafford column for the Forlorn. Tell us what your answer is to this young lady here, Fred.
Well, there's also another part to it too. She also wants some of the other employees to watch, which I kind of have a problem with.
I wonder why.
Yeah.
What kind of a position are you in, anyway? Without giving away any names. What segment of the employment? What segment of work? Computers or?
It's I guess you could consider it computer work, yeah.
Okay, Fred, what's your advice to this young lady here just before we go off the air?
Bible says, man shall not lie with man, and women shall not lie with women. So there's your answer.
Well, I can even give you a better one on that. There's federal state laws against what you described. If that's actually happening, you could go to the Department of Labor Relations. It's headquartered right downtown, about 2 blocks west of the public library, in the old farmer store building right on the river there. And you can go in there. They're in there on Thursdays, and you can tell them the situation without giving any names, and he will give you some guidelines on what you can do about it. And there's also the National Labor Relations Board and Equal Rights Division, and there's laws against what you're describing there, and you can get a major lawsuit out of that, and probably your boss would lose her job over it. But you're definitely in a situation there where you could sue for what you need to there without having to go to bed with her to move up in the ladder. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air. You're the last call.
Hey, Chuck. Hey, Fred. I got a quick question for you guys.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what you think of the theory. Some blacks think that HIV and crack has been perpetrated on them by the white man. I'd like to know your thoughts on this theory, if it's valid, if it has any validity at all.
Well, I personally knew some people that were involved with crack cocaine when it first came out, and they were as white as I am, and I don't think there's any barriers there on race, creed, or color as far as getting them addicted to cocaine. Cocaine has been around for a long time, and it causes addiction whether you're white or black or whatever. As far as HIV, the same thing there. It knows no boundaries. It's killed just as many white people as blacks. It probably started in Africa, so there's more blacks that have died from it, and it's really wiped out certain areas to where all there is left is young kids and grandfathers and grandmothers, and everyone in between is dead. So there's no boundaries there. It knows no difference whether you're white or black or whatever. It's just a stupid theory. Well, the old Cow Report is going to have to say goodbye once again. I've been your host, Chuck Lee. With me has been my rusty, trusty sidekick, Fred the True Stafford. We'll see you again right here on the old Cow Report next time. Adios, amigos and amigettes.
Bye now.
Thanks for tuning in.